I am Mike Kennedy. I am with Interfaith Power and Light, and I serve as IPL's campaign manager for its Faith, Climate, Justice voter campaign. I'm so glad that you're here tonight with us, and grateful that on IPL's benefit, I can welcome you tonight and to the campaign. So what is the Faith, Climate, Justice voter campaign, which I'm going to start hopefully just shorthanding to the campaign. Before I do, though, I want to note that this recording was made on May 10th, 2022. It's the initial gathering of folks who have signed up as congregation captains in the campaign. The campaign is a nonpartisan, Interfaith Power and Light led campaign and includes several faith and climate partners. The campaign is focused on engaging and mobilizing faith voters to communicate their values of caring for our sacred earth and loving our neighbors through voting. Here's what you can expect tonight. I'm going to start off with a campaign overview, and then we'll transition into a little bit of conversation. After that, I will walk you through the captain's toolkit that you all have received already, and many of you have already probably reviewed. And then depending on where we are on the clock and who's with us, we'll do a couple of breakout rooms, one with folks from much of the country and maybe a group of folks from Pennsylvania. We'll see. All right, so the campaign and climate can't wait. We have seen how progress on climate action, we've seen how progress on climate action at the federal level has stalled in the past year. And if we hope to continue making progress to address climate change at the scale our communities need, we need elected officials who have the courage to act on climate and pass policies at every level of government. And as we watch the events in Ukraine with both sadness and fear, one thing's clear: we can't continue down the path of fossil fuel dependence. We must push for a swift transition away from fossil fuels and build a peaceful, clean energy future. And we need elected leaders who have the moral courage to do this. And meanwhile, climate and democracy are interconnected. The same powerful interests who are polluting our air and water are also trying to undermine our sacred right to vote. And so we must ensure that everyone can participate in our democracy and that everyone has fair and equitable access to the ballots. Our faith communities play a critical role in ensuring we have a healthy democracy. The election this year is about the values shaping our future. And together, we can express our values of ensuring a livable planet for our children and that everyone is cared for. We can join together to vote our values and make a difference. And so that's why Interfaith Power and Light and our key focus state partners of Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light, and Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, the IPL affiliates in those three great states, we're working together to increase faith voter turnout in elections and inspire those folks to vote their values of climate justice. As people of faith and conscience, our values call us to ensure that everyone's cared for and to be good stewards of our sacred earth. Millions of Americans of faith care about climate change and justice, but too many of them are unlikely to vote in November. And we know that if we can connect those voters to their values and use proven voter outreach strategies, we can turn many of them out to vote. But we need you and your faith communities to get involved in the campaign to do it. You all have answered that call. Thank you for being here. Some of you might recall our 2020 Faith, Climate, Justice voter campaign. 2020 was the first civic engagement campaign for IPL at such scale, with IPL affiliates, faith communities, and volunteers around the country working together, helping mobilize faith voters to vote their values of caring for creation and loving their neighbors. We worked in 7 states back in 2020: Arizona, Michigan, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and then we moved into Georgia during the runoff, the US Senate and Public Service Commission runoffs there. We collected voter pledges, we shared a faithful voter reflection guide, and we texted faith voters. And this work, the work back in 2020 and the work again this year, 2022, it is strictly nonpartisan. We don't endorse candidates. We're not endorsing or working with parties. We are just encouraging people to vote their values and doing so in a nonpartisan way. So that's important to remember, no matter the kind of work that you're doing with us in the campaign. In 2020, as part of that work, we also crafted an experiment with partners to measure the impact of our voter outreach in a few of the states we worked in. We wanted to see if what we were doing worked and if we could improve upon it in years to come. So our outreach incorporated voter outreach best practices of some things that I mentioned: the voter pledge, sharing our nonpartisan multi-issue faith voter discussion guide, asking folks to encourage 3 friends to vote, and then reaching back out to folks to get them out to vote. We texted over 230,000 voters back in 2020. And our focus then, as it is now, especially on our text, but throughout the campaign, we're focused on low propensity voters of faith, alarmed by the climate crisis. What does low propensity mean? That means folks who don't vote at all or vote very infrequently. We believe that they're voters of faith, and we know or think, based on the data we have, that they're alarmed by what's happening with our climate. So the experiment measured if the religious voters that we were reaching out to, our volunteers were reaching out to via text message, were more likely to have voted as a result of having received those text messages. And the analysis done with the partners that you can see at the bottom of the screen showed that our voter outreach program with the text messages increased voter turnout by 1.7 percentage points, suggesting that almost 1,500 additional people in the data set voted because of our campaign. Now, 1.7 percentage points might not sound like a lot, but in the game or the industry of this, 1.7 percentage point increase is well above a lot of other best practice benchmarks. So another way of saying that is this did pretty well. And later on, I will, and in the email as well, share with you a blog that talks in more detail about these results. So we've taken the lessons that we learned from the 2020 work and we've built on them for this year. We're working nationally again to register and mobilize faith voters. This year, we're focusing on 3 states that I mentioned earlier, and we're working with our affiliates in those states. And they are Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And working together, our goal this year is to reach 550,000 voters. So more than double the number we reached last year. This year, we are focusing on voter registration with our own registration portal, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. We are having conversations and working with folks like you all here tonight to train captains to mobilize their faith communities to get out the faith climate justice vote. And then as we get closer to the election in the fall, we will be texting faith voters in those 3 states. So I'm now going to invite a new voice into our gathering tonight. This is a video from Interfaith Power and Light Board Chair, the Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley, that all of us can use throughout the campaign. And I'll see you back here in a couple minutes.
Hello, I'm the Reverend Dr. Gerald, Providence Missionary Baptist Church here in Atlanta, Georgia, and also board chair of Interfaith Power and Light. All over the country, we're very much concerned about a nation that seemingly has become divided along a lot of different lines. And we've got to come together if we're to be the kind of country that we think that we should be and know that we can become. We're very much concerned about the climate crisis. I was not that involved in climate awareness at least 10 years ago. I was always a civil rights advocate. And we knew that it was our constitutional right to have the right to vote, the right to buy houses where we would, equal education and health care. Those were constitutional rights that we were willing to stand up for and vote that we might have them. Now in 2022, I feel the same way about the climate crisis. It is a constitutional right for everyone to have clean water, clean air, to have streams, pristine, clean streams that we can drink from and fish in and recreational purposes, but that's being denied. One of the ways that we can fight this large issue, this profit over people, these energy companies, these gas and oil and gas companies, is to vote. Voting is a constitutional right, and it is sacred to democracy. So I want each of you to consider registering as many people as you can who are eligible to vote. Once you get them registered, what good is it to be registered unless you educate them about what it is that we need to do? Everything is interconnected. Education, science, faith, health, certainly the environment. So we want to educate people how important it is to go out and vote legislatively for the bills in your state and at the federal level. When we come together and our voices become our vote, and our vote becomes our voices, then we can save not only the next generation, but certainly this generation. I joined voices with Dr. King when he said that the faith community must be the moral consciousness of America. We are in an ethical and a moral war. And this is how we win, when we come together and understand that God gave us a perfectly balanced ecological world, and we have destroyed it because of our own greed. So let us all come together, get registered to vote, understand what you're voting for, and then get out to vote. That's what we've got to do as a team, as a family. And remember this, when it seems so foreboding and you feel like giving up, we didn't give up, we didn't quit, we didn't turn around, we didn't back up, we didn't bend, we didn't bow, nor did we break. But what we did, we voted. That's what you've got to do. Go and vote now.
That's right, Leah. Amen, Reverend Durley. We thank Reverend Durley for his encouragement for us to register voters and get them out to vote. We can always count on him to communicate the urgency and importance of what we work on with a lot of love and enthusiasm. So we thank him for that. As you can tell from what he said, our campaign has a big focus on voter registration. We want to make sure our faith communities are registered and ready to vote, and the communities around them. You heard earlier about what we're up against, and the biggest barrier or issue at the polls that folks often have is a problem with their registration. And so in advance of them voting, we want to make sure folks confirm their registration is up to date and that it wasn't purged. It's also worth checking registration because they may have moved and didn't update their address. And so having folks double check helps them get ready to vote and to be ready. We've got our own voter registration portal to help folks check the registration or to actually register. And once they've checked it, it's not active. It's not an active feature yet, but it'll soon also ask them to pledge to vote. And you can see there on your screen the URL or the website people can go to. And there's also a QR code that people can use to go straight to that site. That is a peek at the site that folks go to. You'll see more of that later. We're also asking folks to pledge. I'll share that link later, and I'll pause for just a moment for you to take a look at that pledge. I also want to give you a feel for how this is going to be a team effort and what we're working towards, and share some of our campaign goals with you. We're looking to engage 500 current volunteers and welcome 500 new IPL volunteers into this campaign. You've heard the phrase fashionably late. You all are fashionably early as the first wave of congregation captains to sign up. We're looking to register at least 1,000 new voters and maybe even stretch that to 2,000. We want to collect 5,000 voter pledges, share 10,000 voter guides, either digitally or hard copies. And thinking back to that 500,000 plus voters that we're going to text in the fall, we want to turn out at least 8,000 additional voters in that group through our text messages. And it's all you and your fellow volunteers who power that work. These are things that you can do right now. Pledge to be a voter, check your own registration. Again, you'll get the links to be able to do that. I am going to skip this slide for actually, you know what, I'm not. So let me share this with you. The voters who care about climate justice are folks that our partner, the Yale Program on Climate Change Communications, has researched. This graphic here shows the range of where Americans are on climate. Yale has done some great work called a report and research called 6 Americas. And it defines and classifies us into 6 groups about what we think about climate change. Many more people are worried about climate change than we might think, and many of them are also people of faith. All those folks, they're not all voting. These are the folks, the alarmed folks that we need to reach with this campaign. But I want you to be thinking about this. These may not be folks who are already in our networks. And so just as we go through tonight and maybe in the conversation, take a moment to think about your faith community. How likely is it that all of those folks vote regularly? If we're going to be able to change how many people in the climate alarm group vote, we're going to have to figure out ways to reach out to new people in addition to the people that we know. Are these folks in your congregations? Do you know which congregations these voters might be in that you could partner with? So all questions to be thinking about. And so this election is about the values shaping our future. Together, we can protect our sacred earth and create a better world for our children. Like I said, we can join together, devote our values, make a difference by getting out the climate justice votes. And with that said, I just want to thank you again for being part of this campaign and being here tonight. And I'm looking forward to working with you. So have a great evening and thanks again.